Welcome to the second Sunday of Easter. I don't know about you, but to me, it still feels like it's Easter Day. And our gospel leads us in that direction as well. The gospel today is similar to the lessons on Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday, in that we have the same readings every year. The psalm and the other lessons may change according to which lectionary year we're in. We're in B this year. But the gospel stays the same, so it's kind of become part of our DNA. And yet, it is forever new. It is part of the beauty of the Bible that it speaks to us where we are, even when we're hearing the same words that we've always heard. Words we heard and thought we understood from years ago suddenly come into our life as our life is today and says, this is what God is saying to you today. The Gospel of John this morning is different in some ways from the other Gospels. For example, I mentioned on Maundy, Thursday that John's Gospel doesn't mention the Last Supper. The three other Gospels do not have the story of Jesus' interaction with Thomas, although they do have very similar stories. Our Gospel today begins in the evening on the day of Jesus' resurrection, with the disciples behind locked doors for fear of the Jews. They were grieving. They were in shock. And based on what happened next, they were still having a difficult time believing the women's story of the resurrection. The first 5 verses today tell the story of Jesus appearing to the disciples and showing them his hands and his side. The difference between the beginning and the following verses is Thomas states what the others had probably been thinking until Jesus appeared to them. They had doubts. Although we read this passage from John every second Sunday of Easter, the other Gospels mention doubts as well. In Matthew, we're told that when the disciples went to Galilee, they worshiped him, but some doubted. In Mark, we're told of Mary Magdalene telling those who were weeping that Jesus appeared to her and they would not believe it. Then appearing to 2 disciples who went back and told the rest, and the rest of the disciples didn't believe it. In Luke, when the women go back to tell the disciples of what they had seen and heard, these words seemed to the disciples an idle tale, and they did not believe them. Jesus again appears to 2 disciples who go back and tell the others that they spoke with Jesus on the road to Emmaus. Also in Luke, Jesus says to all the disciples, "Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I, myself. Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." So Thomas is not alone in his doubt. However, in John, we have this specific set-apart conversation with Thomas a week after the resurrection. Taken by itself, one might think that Jesus was upset with Thomas from the sentence, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and have yet come to believe." But John goes on, "These are written so that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing you may have life in his name." John is talking to us all these centuries later. We are those who are blessed as we have come to believe. We all have doubts, just as Thomas and the other disciples did. If we say we have no doubts, we are only fooling ourselves. But we love Thomas. He is the unbeliever who hides inside every believing Christian. Jesus knows we have doubts about his resurrection and so many other things in our lives. We become afraid just as they were afraid, and we always want a little more proof. Sometimes, though, we have the door locked, just as the disciples did. Our intellect says Jesus' resurrection is beyond belief and beyond the grasp of science. However, it was never our intellect that Jesus was teaching and preaching about. Our doubts come in stages, depending on where we are in our lives or the lives of our families. Those hard questions of faith, which many skeptics have had before us. In the early church, it was doubted whether God, being eternal and divine, could die and still be God. Or is the doubt that darkness of our souls, where disbelief pushes against us and the world around us? Those times when life is tragic or violent, and there seems to be no sign of a resurrected, loving Christ. Yet God is there in our fear and grief, in our anger and doubt. How are we to know when God arrives and responds to us? Will we know it's God? We are shown in the gospel today God's response to our doubt. For in our focus on Thomas and his doubt, our doubt, the real point is who Jesus is and his reaction. We are given the answer in how Jesus appears to Thomas. Jesus appears although the doors have been closed and locked out of fear. He walks directly to Thomas, seeking him out, just as he seeks us out to show us love when we are doubtful. Rather than begin by arguing his unbelief, Jesus' first words to Thomas are, "Peace be with you." Jesus welcomes Thomas to put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe. It is only then that Thomas realizes it is Jesus, just as the other disciples did not realize it was Jesus when he first appeared to them. Jesus is patient with us, just as he was patient then. We are not chastised, as Thomas was not chastised. We can be confident in the belief that when we lack faith, Jesus will meet us wherever we are, no matter how far our heart has turned away from him, no matter our belief or unbelief. Jesus' appearance to us is certain to change over time as we change. And we may not know him in the moment, but in time we will understand. One moment, God may come from behind an altar, calling us to joyously celebrate through the riches of the liturgy. Jesus may appear to us through the beauty of music or art. The next moment, God may come as a beggar on the corner, reminding us that love is at times ragged and vulnerable. Perhaps in the face of a child, or the silent warmth we are wrapped in through the hug of a friend while we weep. When God comes to us, we will recognize God's presence in the moments when peace is offered, where in the midst of pain, we realize we are not alone, but that Jesus came to seek us out and reveal his suffering for us, and that God has been beside us all along. Amen.